Chapter 4, Section 4 of the Greek View of Life by Goldsworthy Lowes Dickinson. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Martin Geeson. Chapter 4, Section 4 Music and the Dance. Turning now from the plastic arts to that other group which the Greeks classed together under the name of music, namely music in the narrower sense, dancing and poetry, we find still more clearly emphasised and more elaborately worked out the subordination of aesthetic to ethical and religious ends. Music, in fact, as they used the term, was the centre of Greek education, and its moral character thus became a matter of primary importance. By it were formed, it was supposed, the mind and temper of the citizens, and so the whole constitution of the state. The introduction of a new kind of music, says Plato, must be shunned as imperilling the whole state, since styles of music are never disturbed without affecting the most important political institutions. The new style, he goes on, gradually gaining a lodgment, quietly insinuates itself into manners and customs, and from these it issues in greater force, and makes its way into mutual compacts, and from compacts it goes on to attack laws and constitutions, displaying the utmost impudence, until it ends by overturning everything, both in public and in private. And as in his Republic he had defined the character of the poetry that should be admitted into his ideal state, so in the Laws he specially defines the character of the melodies and dances, regarding them as the most important factor in determining and preserving the manners and institutions of the citizens. Nothing at first sight to a modern mind could be stranger than this point of view. That poetry has a bearing on conduct we can indeed understand, though we do not make poetry the centre of our system of education. But that moral effects should be attributed to music and to dancing, and that these should be regarded as of such importance as to influence profoundly the whole constitution of a state, will appear to the majority of modern men an unintelligible paradox. Yet no opinion of the Greeks is more profoundly characteristic than this of their whole way of regarding life, and none would better repay a careful study. That moral character should be attributed to the influence of music is only one, and perhaps the most striking, illustration of that general identification by the Greeks of the ethical and the aesthetic standards on which we have so frequently had occasion to insist. Virtue, in their conception, was not a hard conformity to a law felt as alien to the natural character. It was the free expression of a beautiful and harmonious soul. And this very metaphor, harmonious, which they so constantly employ, involves the idea of a close connection between music and morals. Character, in the Greek view, is a certain proportion of the various elements of the soul, and the right character is the right proportion. But the relation in which these elements stand to one another could be directly affected, it was found, by means of music. Not only could the different emotions be excited or assuaged in various degrees, but the whole relation of the emotional to the rational element could be regulated and controlled by the appropriate melody and measure. That this connection between music and morals really does exist is recognized in a rough and general way by most people who have any musical sense. There are rhythms and tunes, for example, that are felt to be vulgar and base, and others that are felt to be ennobling. Some music, Wagner's for instance, is frequently called immoral. Gounod is described as enervating, Beethoven as bracing, and the like. And however absurd such comments may often appear to be in detail, underlying them is the undoubtedly well grounded sense that various kinds of music have various ethical qualities. But it is just this side of music which has been neglected in modern times that was the one on which the Greeks laid most stress. Infinitely inferior to the moderns in the mechanical resources of the art, they had made, it appears, a far finer and closer analysis of its relation to emotional states, with the result that even in music, which we describe as the purest of the arts, congratulating ourselves on its absolute dissociation from all definite intellectual conceptions, even here the standard of the Greeks was as much ethical as aesthetic, and the style of music was distinguished and its value appraised, not only by the pleasure to be derived from it, but also by the effect it tended to produce on character. Of this position we have a clear and definite statement in Aristotle. Virtue, he says, consists in loving and hating in the proper way, and implies therefore a delight in the proper emotions. But emotions of any kind are produced by melody and rhythm. Therefore, by music a man becomes accustomed to feeling the right emotions. Music has thus the power to form character, and the various kinds of music, based on the various modes, may be distinguished by their effects on character. One, for example, working in the direction of melancholy, another of effeminacy, one encouraging abandonment, another self-control, another enthusiasm, and so on through the series. It follows that music may be judged not merely by the pleasure it gives, but by the character of its moral influence. Pleasure indeed is essential, or there would be no art. But the different kinds of pleasure given by different kinds of music are to be distinguished not merely by quantity, but by quality. One will produce a right pleasure of which the good man will approve, and which will have a good effect on character. Another will be in exactly the opposite case. Or, as Plato puts it, the excellence of music is to be measured by pleasure, but the pleasure must not be that of chance persons. The fairest music is that which delights the best and best educated, and especially that which delights the one man who is preeminent in virtue and education. We see then that even pure music to the Greeks had a distinct and definite ethical bearing. But this ethical influence was further emphasised by the fact that it was not their custom to enjoy their music pure. What they called music, as has been already pointed out, was an intimate union of melody, verse,